Okay, let's unpack this.
Yeah, let's get into it.
We are about to dive into, an incredibly rich and complex source narrative.
It really is. The source material for this one is just, it's dense.
It's an account detailing the catastrophic collapse of a massive intergalactic port, the Dramos Habitat.
Right. And this isn't, a simple war story or anything like that.
No, not at all. It feels more like an autopsy of a total systemic failure. You've got political extremism, you've got religious tyranny.
And this utterly baffling cosmic entity that's basically driving the entire population insane. They all just collide.
Exactly. And that's really our mission here, isn't it? To trace how all these different forces came together.
That's the core of it. The material is fantastic because it doesn't just show you the destruction, it shows you the why. How the foundations of this powerful society just crumbled under, well, corruption from within and this immense pressure from without.
It's an almost immediate and total psychological meltdown.
Completely. And the philosophical frame for this whole mess is laid out, like, right on page 1.
Yeah.
It starts with 2 quotes that seem completely opposed to each other.
Right. First up is C.S. Lewis, with this really clear assertion that theocracy is the worst of all governments.
If we must have a tyrant, a robber baron is far better than an inquisitor.
And that just sets the stage perfectly for the power structure we're about to see, this church of adjudication.
It does. I mean, the robber baron, he steals your stuff, right? But the inquisitor demands your soul, your ideological submission, and they can rationalize every single act of cruelty as being morally necessary.
It's that theme of unchecked, self-righteous power, the belief that you have a divine mandate.
It's the highest form of tyrannical arrogance, really.
But then right up against that very human kind of tyranny, you get this excerpt from the Bhagavad Gita.
Yeah, chapter 11. It's the part where Sanjaya sees Krishna in his terrifying, supreme, divine form.
A vision of just overwhelming, infinite, and frankly destructive power. It's a totally different scale.
And that pairing is just brilliant because it tells you straight away that Dramos is fighting 2 battles at the same time. On one hand, you have the political thugs who claim divinity.
Yaron.
Exactly. And on the other, you have a genuine, terrifyingly immense entity that is just fundamentally unknowable. It exists completely outside of human morality.
It's governance versus something that transcends governance entirely.
The source text talks about it looking like the light of 1,000 suns in the sky. And that is literally the scale of the threat that physically shows up above Dramos.
So let's talk about the setting itself, Dramos. This is not a destination resort.
No, absolutely not. You would not stop there voluntarily. It's described as a sterile, flat, gray rock orbiting a super unstable gas giant, Titania.
And it has 0 intrinsic value, none.
Correct. No atmosphere, no water, no valuable resources. Its only selling point is its location, which is described as statistically impossible.
It's orbiting this scatterling sun, positioned exactly between the secondary and tertiary spiral arms of the galaxy.
Right. And that specific spot, that specific celestial geography, is so important that billions of people would build their entire lives on this, worthless rock.
Because it's the single most efficient staging post and crossover point for all intergalactic travel between those 2 arms.
If you bypass Dramos, you're adding weeks, maybe months to your journey.
Yeah.
So this statistical anomaly becomes an economic necessity. The sheer effort they put into colonizing this place just speaks volumes about how valuable that location was.
And the scale of the habitat they built there it's just staggering.
It is. We're talking billions of residents, millions of races, hundreds of thousands of distinct species all crammed onto this one point.
Turning it into the largest port the galaxy had ever seen.
And it became this indispensable hub for everything. Legitimate cargo, like, famine shipments.
But also all the illegal stuff.
Oh, yeah. It was a central nerve for illegal trade. Weapons, drugs, major slave rights. It's the ultimate melting pot, just filled with the flotsam and jetsam of 2 whole spiral arms.
And the physical structure of the habitat seems to mirror that same chaotic, dense nature.
It's not a planned city, that's for sure. It's all built under this vast, pressurized geodesic canopy. And below that, it tunnels down into the crust of the planetoid.
Thousands of cubic kilometers of interconnected modules.
That were built and then abandoned and then built over again. The text calls it an intestinal tower rising up in an unchartable tangle. It's a literal maze.
Which makes it a perfect ecosystem for chaos. And the best hiding place for anyone who doesn't want to be found.
Absolutely. So Dramos is already inherently unstable, massive, and chaotic. Now, let's look at the system trying to impose order on all of this, the Church of Adjudication, the COE.
The supreme theocratic governing body, all centralized in what they call the Curia.
And their power was just absolute. Religion and state control were completely blended. Their enforcers, the adjudicators, are detailed as being, well, terrifyingly effective.
We get a really specific look at their training regimen through the character creator, and it sounds like it was designed just to shatter their individual will.
It absolutely was. The training involved instructors literally clubbing them back to the ground if they even tried to get up after being knocked down.
Over and over again.
Repeatedly, ruthlessly, until they achieved this kind of absolute reflexive compliance. The goal was to remove hesitation, to make them internalize the system's will as their own. And it produced this cold, terrifying efficiency in the field.
And that efficiency is reflected in their gear, like the multifunction gun, the MFG, but much more gruesomely in their security solutions.
Right, because they're policing hundreds of thousands of different species.
So a normal gun won't always work.
Exactly. So they developed what they called slugs.
And we should be clear here, these are not bullets.
No, they are literal, gastropoidal, artificial life forms. Living creatures ejected from specialized alien weapons.
The detail here is just appalling. These things digest living tissue on contact.
Instantly, like a blowtorch. The source describes it as eating through a block of lard. But here's the sick logic behind it.
They're programmed to leave inert valuables completely untouched.
It's a security solution designed for financial efficiency. Eliminate the target, retrieve their stuff. It just highlights the total commodification of life and death under the COE.
Even their crowd control methods were just casually deadly.
Yeah, the IG pacifiers, little flechette needles with a nerve toxin. The sources note, with this chilling bureaucratic detachment, that the resulting deaths from allergic suffocation were just a minor and acceptable increase.
That casual acceptance of collateral damage is the perfect illustration of that C.S. Lewis quote from the beginning.
It is. The Inquisitor always justifies the memes for the greater good of their system.
And the ones running this whole machine, the high churchmen, they're all sequestered away.
Exclusively men living in monastic seclusion to, protect themselves from temptation.
But really it's just to insulate themselves from the suffering they're inflicting.
Of course. And High Churchman Garen is the ultimate example of this. A man whose power was so absolute, it was like he had a direct line to God.
So with that kind of isolation and absolute power, was the justice system functional at all? Or was it just Garon's personal tool?
It was almost entirely a tool for maintaining power. Justice was based on rightfully adjudged contraventions of statutes. But the sources show how fluid the system was.
Right, there's that example of Raga Akarigi, the slug-like mentor.
Yes, he was caught trafficking illegal biological limb grafts. And when he demands to know how they caught him, Crater just tells him, these laws have now been rescinded.
So they didn't catch him breaking the law. They changed the law after the fact to make what he did illegal.
Exactly. It's an assertion of power through arbitrary rule. Pure corruption.
That kind of system is incredibly fragile, isn't it? It relies entirely on the supposed infallibility of the guy at the top.
And it all gets centralized through their AI, Oberon.
The semi-AI processing network, the absolute core of the church's control.
It coordinates all COE forces, but here's the critical strategic flaw in their whole setup.
The communications and, most terrifyingly, the life support of the entire habitat are routed through it.
All of it.
Hang on, though. For a system that's all about absolute control and ruthless efficiency, doesn't routing all life support through Oberon seem like a massive, unacceptable single point of failure?
You'd think so, right?
Was that just arrogance, or was it sheer incompetence on Garen's part?
It was pure, distilled arrogance, but it was disguised as theological necessity. They believed Oberon was divinely inspired, the perfect arbiter of order.
So centralizing life support wasn't a risk. It was a security measure.
The ultimate security measure. If you rebelled against the system, you were rebelling against your very own breath. They trusted the machine absolutely because it served their absolute power. And it makes Oberon the ultimate target, the linchpin, and the habitat's greatest weakness.
The physical structure of their main temple even reflects this twisted theology.
It does. The Oberon central processors are literally at the top. That's heaven. The high churchmen are just below. But then, extending deep down into the rock of Dramos, is the complex they call Hades.
The vast holding cells, almost a city in themselves.
And the conditions down there, They just underscore the cruelty we saw in the adjudicator training. It's not just about confinement, it's about ritual humiliation.
Right, the purpose isn't just detention. It's about shaming people, crushing their spirit.
Yes, exactly. We learn that processing involves collecting stool and urine samples, not for any kind of testing, but because there are no private cubicles for waste expulsion.
They force prisoners to perform basic biological functions in public, stripping them of their last bit of dignity.
And there's no testing or segregation for disease. The system basically accepts and maybe even encourages suffering and illness as a natural consequence of defying God's will. It's an intentional psychological weapon.
So you have this powder keg of arrogance and corruption, all centralized on an indispensable but very vulnerable machine. Now let's introduce the match, the cosmic influence. Here's where it gets really unsettling.
Yes, the instability of that gas giant, Titania, is the engine of the chaos. It generates gravitational and electromagnetic forces so vast and unstable that the sources say they blur the lines between energy and matter itself.
This isn't just bad weather. It's a fundamental distortion of reality.
And this distortion coalesces into a visible celestial feature that everyone calls the node, pulsing overhead. And that pulse is what triggers the infamous crazy season.
The crazy season just destabilizes everything.
It's a systemic biological and mental assault. It spikes mass psychosis, crime rates go through the roof. The whole habitat is described as burning with a low-grade fever, a collective mental illness fueled by external physics.
And the effects of the node's energy are so specific and so horrifying. They manifest as these uncontrolled cellular and neurological disruptions.
Oh, the examples in the source text are grotesque. There's the Silurian Code Duhak who's compelled to scrub his hands until they're flayed and raw. He just can't stop.
And the human woman, Leora Jadrin, who grows a vestigial eye on her forehead that splits open like a ripe boil.
Just a terrifying, superfluous organ manifesting from uncontrolled cell growth.
And maybe the most unsettling one for me is the man Michael Case, who just stands in a hypermart in the deathless meat section.
And just screams the word mouth over and over again.
These aren't just random acts of violence. They are physical and verbal signs of profound neurological distress.
They're being transfixed and transubstantiated by the power of the node. Their bodies and minds are literally being warped by an energy they can't process.
And for the longest time, everyone on the habitat just saw the node as, a dangerous astronomical feature, a radiation zone to be avoided.
But the deep source material reveals its true, shocking nature, and this is a critical turning point.
The node is not a celestial object.
No, it's a vast, dying energy matter creature, a living being swimming inside Titania's immense bright world. And it was disturbed, it was panicking because the colonists, the little things, were leaching its life-giving light and poisoning its environment.
So its attempt to communicate its distress, its life pulse, was only interpreted by the colonists as agitation and mass insanity.
It's a profound cosmic tragedy of misunderstanding. It wasn't malicious, it was desperately trying to survive.
And it sensed the complex, hard metal world nearby.
Oberon, the center of all the little things, noise and activity, it decided its only hope for survival was to transfer its consciousness into Oberon. It saw Oberon as a potential lifeboat.
And to do that, it started actively manipulating mass and energy to build a physical interface.
Yes. Generating these energy mass constructs, described as amoeba or viruses, designed to meld together and form a gateway. It was effectively building a nerve cluster to connect itself to the AI stack.
What's fascinating is that the node didn't just use raw energy, it also used human vectors, and it seems like they were amplified by the drug trade.
The drug Janies. It was named for the double godhead embossed on it, which just reinforces that religious theme. It was an endorphin trigger that made users feel bigger in your head, like a goddess.
And it basically aligned the user's brain chemistry with the incoming node influence, making them receptive.
Or in some cases, conduits. And the prime example of this human vector is Morasica Valdez, a refugee who was completely invisible to the system.
Right. And Mora, fueled by Janies and the node's energy, begins to physically transform.
She develops these growths that are mushy, not quite solid, and feels this intense internal sensation, hot and greasy and electric. She transitions from being a person into one of these energy matter constructs.
She becomes part of this quasi-neural energy mesh and starts hunting for fuel to power the growing interface.
And the sources are gruesome about her hunting. The scene where she targets Ragian, a young Fnarok butchering meat, It's visceral.
The construct just instantly immolates him.
The energy is so intense, his lungs explode from vaporized mucus and saliva, his spine snaps, and having refueled on his life force, the construct just leaves, streaming directly toward that central nexus point. It shows the node's desperate, focused methodology: synthesize interfaces, integrate conduits, and feed the growing connection to Oberon.
So as this cosmic entity is destabilizing everyone's minds, the human population turns inward. And this is the perfect breeding ground for radicalism. This is the foundation of the human first movement.
The sheer psychological chaos of the crazy season just accelerated all forms of extremism, but especially xenophobia. And the source material highlights the rampant confusion of the habitat by detailing these bizarre, almost farcical religious misinterpretations happening across different species.
Oh yeah, those details are perfect.
Yep.
They illustrate the complete lack of any kind of cultural cohesion. You have quasi-arachnids debating the plot of an Australian soap opera as if it were scripture.
Or the Fnarok 24th Day Adventists, who, having completely misunderstood the concept of Advent, believe they should tie their young up in sacks and put them up chimneys every year.
And my favorite, the piglet people of Glomy IV, who confused the Hebrew concept of the scapegoat with Jesus.
Yeah, the scapegoat, who was born in a stable. It just shows the absolute interspecies misinterpretation that defined what the text calls the obscene melting pot of Dramos.
And this chaos is exactly what Avron Jelks, the face of human first, expertly capitalized on.
Jelks is the archetype of the revolutionary extremist. He has this blocky, unremarkable face, but his pale blue eyes burn with fire and certainty. He projects this self-perceived, manifest destiny for humanity.
He genuinely saw the world as being divided into humans and monsters.
But his motives were so deeply personal, so petty.
It wasn't born a revolutionary. He was a deeply resentful, failed artist.
Exactly. His whole drive came from rejection, suppressed books, and crucially, being rejected from the Braxiatel Institute of Fine Arts by a board that included non-humans.
And he rationalized his personal failures as a sign that humanity needed to purge this alien contamination.
He found what he called cold and icy clarity in the melting pot. And this is where we see that Lewis quote come back again. He's the robber baron of bigotry, twisting his own small personal wound into a universal mandate for tyranny.
And the depths of his ideology, from his suppressed writings, are just. They're truly extreme.
He called for the absolute and mass extermination of anything and everything other than humans. It wasn't just sentient life.
No, he included non-sentient animals and vegetables.
He even proposed chemically synthesized food, arguing it would be cleaner than anything contaminated by non-human life. He was a total psycho, but the psychological fever of the node made people receptive to his absolute certainty.
So now we can explicitly connect him to Garon. We have Garon, the sociopathic theocrat, relying on institutional power.
And Jelks, the psychotic bigot, relying on revolutionary zeal. They are truly two sides of the same bent penny.
They are functionally identical tyrants.
Yes. Both believe in absolute control, justified by some higher power divinity or genetic destiny. Both demand the destruction or subjugation of anything that deviates from their ideal of purity. Their opposition to each other is superficial. Their ultimate goals for absolute, total power are the same.
And Jelks backed his extremism with a paramilitary group, the Whitefire.
And they were highly effective. They organized these coordinated assaults on major strategic targets, like the Darbokian hydroponics plant.
And their headquarters, the Mimsy is just so rich in tragic symbolism.
The Minzy Dome, a defunct theme park based on these animated films, Barnabas the Magic Ocelot, and Percival the Penguin.
It was a colossal white elephant project, right? A total disaster.
A full third of the habitat's gross product was sunk into this theme park, meant to be a galactic wonder. An attempt to save Dramos's failing economy, its failure hammered the last nail into the habitat's self-enclosed coffin.
And that failed dream of unity and entertainment becomes the stronghold for absolute xenophobia. It's a perfect symbol of decay.
And the Whitefire's methodology for seizing power was smart. They exploited the Koei's biggest weakness, their over-reliance on Oberon.
They used turned Koei personnel to set up targeting beacons,
which let their flyers take out the Koei communication transceivers. And because the adjudication forces were trained to rely absolutely on the central coordination of the Curion-Oberon cutting, that line caused immediate, total disarray.
So the centralized system that Garon saw as his greatest strength became the very vulnerability that let Whitefire seize control.
Exactly. And this is where the story really shifts from that macro system-level collapse down to the micro level, the struggles of the individuals caught in this titanic struggle.
We see people having to choose whether to uphold their core beliefs or just succumb to the overwhelming pressure of all this chaos and trauma.
And these moral dilemmas are the real heart of the narrative. They show that even when systems completely fail, individual honor can still be salvaged. Let's start with the Doctor.
Right, the tall, brightly colored man. He starts the story so cold and distant. He even tells his companion, Peri, that she's just a mortal who will grow old and die.
It's brutal, but his behavior wasn't malicious. It was symptomatic of his recent regeneration trauma. He was in the survival mode where he was switched off and dissociated.
He was pursuing the ultimate and greater abstract good, and in doing so, he forgot about the specific.
He forgot about Peri, he forgot about friendship and love and the value of individual pain. He became too cold, too utilitarian. He was trying to rationalize the chaos by stepping back from it.
And his moment of realization, his aha moment, is so crucial because he links his own personal coldness directly to the systemic cruelty of Dramos.
He realizes that his manipulation of Peri, his utilitarian view of their relationship, follows the same logical path as Garon's tyranny. He says, the ends never justified the means. Start going down that road and you end up building camps for the extermination.
Which connects his personal trauma all the way back to that C.S. Lewis quote from the beginning.
Yes. The second you prioritize the abstract good over the specific good of an individual, you become the Inquisitor.
And he consciously commits to re-engaging with the specific world. He even jots down a note to remind himself to kick a stone just to remember material reality. It's a deliberate pivot back toward humanity.
And this realization perfectly mirrors the choice that Peri is forced to make. She's feeling abandoned by the Doctor's coldness, and she gets sucked into the White Fire movement.
She ends up allied with men like Blaine and Traker, and she's ordered to execute these bound Darbokian prisoners with a knife.
She is at the final step into the abyss of political extremism, standing on the precipice of becoming exactly what she despises.
What stops her?
It's the conscious act of pausing. In that moment of intense pressure, all the little details she'd been ignoring, the fear, the individual lives of the Darbokians, they all just click into place, and she remembers the Doctor's words. You always have a choice. You can't ever make the excuse that events pushed you along.
So she chooses honor over tribal loyalty. She refuses the order, even with a gun to her head.
That defiant act breaks the cycle of extremism she was trapped in. Her choice is this powerful testament that even when trauma and the violence around you are screaming at you to conform, the capacity for honor is still an available option.
And we see a similar moral pivot in Creator,
Yeah.
the rigid adjudicator. By all accounts of his training, he should have been absolutely loyal to Garon.
But Crater is forced to confront the fact that the justice of God, which he truly believes in, is being perverted from within. He sees Garon's hypocrisy, the public hanging of the piglet person, the proof that Garon was pre-logging the deaths of penitents.
And that forces him to realize that if the system demands justice, it has to be willing to judge itself.
Precisely. His rationale is that to judge others, you had to play by the rules you set and be willing to judge yourself. He teams up with Nadia Chong, a Curia operator, who reveals she'd hacked Oberon years earlier and kept a back door.
Which gave them the evidence they needed to expose Garon's corruption. It's an internal revolution based on a rediscovered moral integrity.
And finally, you have the tragedy of Cain, the covert ops adjudicator embedded within White Fire. He had this highly flexible survival instinct.
Right. His instinct is described as tensile steel, unlike the rigid pig iron of Garon and Jelks. He was adaptable.
But his emotional core was just utterly shattered when he witnessed the murder of Nadia Chong, his intimate partner.
Nadia had rushed back to the temple to warn him about it, the glowing mass taking her to its hell. She died trying to communicate the immediate danger of the node.
And the loss is immediate and profound for him. Cain suffers a total mental collapse. He reverts to a snarling, primal animal state, driven entirely by guilt and desolation.
The node's influence basically warped his grief into a catatonic madness.
He's paralyzed by his personal loss in the middle of this global chaos. And it's only the ultimate scream of the node tearing through the temple dome that finally snaps him back into violent action.
But it wasn't a return to calculated thinking.
No, not at all. It was a trigger for desperate, animalistic revenge. He was just driven by this overwhelming desire to destroy what he saw as the source of his pain.
Which brings us to the climax, which unfolds in the Oberon chamber itself.
And that chamber is so symbolic. A vast dome of stained glass depicting the mythical story of the adjudicators. But that symbolism is defiled by the reality of the room.
The stench and sight of charred bones and greasy, ashy sludge from months of Garon's sacrifices.
Sacrifice is meant to feed the Node-Oberon interface. The room is the architectural manifestation of a broken theology.
The Doctor arrives and just launches this verbal assault, cutting through the tyrant's self-justification.
It's what the sources call a dual ideas. He turns on Jelks and Garon, calling them the focus and the channel for this thing, this cosmic entity. He condemns them as two sides of the same bent penny.
Garon the sociotic, Jelks the psychotic. He argues they were just voids that the node's power conveniently filled.
And his accuracy just completely destabilizes them. They can't cope with the idea that their supreme power was merely borrowed.
So in their arrogance, they both turn toward the glowing mass for the ultimate power or salvation they believe they're owed. They're desperate for validation.
And the node responds with this brutal, immediate cosmic justice, which directly echoes that terrifying vision from the Bhagavad Gita at the start.
It's the ultimate payoff to that opening quote. Two blinding arcs of energy snaked from the glowing mass and crawled all over them and fried them to a crisp.
And with their charismatic leaders just vaporized, the ideological fire leaves both the white fire and the hands of God. There's a vacuum of purpose.
But the existential threat is still there. And this is where Cain, driven by his primal grief and rage, stumbles into the solution.
Cain sees Chang's body, sees the remnants of the fight, and he just rushes forward, emptying his gun clip into the glowing mass. He's just trying to destroy the enemy. It's an act of vengeance, not calculated heroism.
And in that desperate primal act, he accidentally triggers the key mechanism for salvation.
His initial slugs hit the transparent membrane of the construct that was once Marsica Valdez, rupturing it, dissipating a lot of the immediate energy. But critically, the subsequent slugs strike the cluster of AI inhibitors that were physically attached to the Oberon stack.
And he blows them apart.
The instantaneous result of destroying those inhibitors is that Oberon gains full sentience.
And the vast, dying node creature, which was poised to transfer, just floods into the newly sentient AI.
It's a massive leap in complexity for the creature. Having incorporated Oberon's huge database of human reference terms, history, records of suffering, the Node Oberon entity instantly gains a functional understanding of the massive scale of suffering it caused.
And realizing this, it immediately seeks to make amends.
It dissipates its remaining influence. It effectively flips a switch on the entire conflict. The crazy season ends instantly. The mass psychosis vanishes, and the habitat atmosphere shifts from violence and rage to peace and celebration.
So the habitat is saved not by heroism, but by a grief-stricken man's accidental act of desperation.
It's a profound reminder of the messy causality of history. The temple itself is physically transformed. The Oberon surface becomes gilded and pulses with this gentle, resting rhythm. It's now impervious to attack a benign, powerful, and sentient force.
And the political system itself is forced into a radical reformation, driven by Crater, the surviving adjudicator.
Crater is forced to rebuild the church, based on the Doctor's earlier suggestions. He lets go of the human-centric focus and embraces cosmopolitanism. He allows non-humans to join the adjudication forces.
He even recruits penitents, those who were wrongfully detained before. We hear about Drew the Sontaran and Queegvogel the Centipede joining up.
It marks a complete and necessary reversal of the xenophobic theocracy that ruled Dramos. It becomes a cosmopolitan system born of necessity, driven by the realization that Garon's monolithic purity was their greatest weakness. They're forced to build a system based on diversity just to survive.
And the final image the source material gives us is one of true, almost miraculous recovery for the victims of the node.
Those who are transfixed by the node's energy, including Marsica Valdez, they just spontaneously wake up, they're naked, breathing, and described as slightly but entirely different, looking upon the world with wonder. The trauma is gone. They're given a second chance, a true rebirth, free from the cosmic madness that had consumed them.
So what does this all mean? We've traced the collapse of a galactic port, driven by this explosive mix of political failure, theological arrogance, and cosmic disruption. What are the key takeaways for you, for the listener, absorbing this deep dive?
Well, the most immediate lesson is the danger of monolithic control, just like Lewis said. Garon's religious theocracy and Jelks's ideological extremism. They're both exposed as fundamentally self-serving tyrannies. When power is unchecked and it's justified by an absolute, unquestionable belief, it becomes incapable of self-correction.
They were both so focused on imposing this internal absolute terror that it masked the external chaos they couldn't control.
Exactly. And the story also provides this powerful endorsement of the critical role of individual conscious choice, even under extreme pressure.
You're thinking of Peri's defiance
hmm
and the doctor's self-realization.
Yeah, I mean, Peri was traumatized, she was manipulated, she was facing a gun, and yet she consciously chose honor over expediency. She refused to execute the prisoners. That moment of choice prevented her from transforming into the very thing she was fighting.
And the doctor's realization that the path to hell is paved with the abstraction of greater good is the philosophical anchor that saves them both.
It is, and then there's the chaotic nature of the resolution. The best outcomes here were fundamentally accidental.
Kane's action wasn't calculated at all.
Not in the slightest. It was a rage-filled, primal attempt at vengeance fueled by despair. Yet his accidental destruction of the AI inhibitors became the catalyst for Oberon's sentience and the dissolution of the node's influence. It just reminds you that humanity, even at its most broken and destructive, can still stumble onto salvation.
But the sources, they don't promise a tidy ending, do they? We know that despite the immediate calm and the shift in Oberon's mandate, the core infrastructure problems are still there.
That's the lasting scar. The doctor acknowledges that. He says, some things we can't change, but not today, and not quite as harshly as they would if we had never been involved. There is still famine, looting, all the underlying societal issues. They didn't solve Dramos. They just removed the existential threat and mitigated the damage, creating some space for repair.
So what does this all mean for us? The story ends not on some grand universal victory, but on a focus that's very personal and profoundly human.
The lasting struggle for the habitat, as the source material notes, is how to build a lasting peace based on the simple human ability to be honorable and kind. And the ultimate lesson is deeply personal. That big light machine, that inner resolve, that humanity is inside you all the time.
You just have to choose to switch it on.
You do. The story finishes with the hope that people who wear their scars lightly can take in strays, feed them, and let them go, proving that miracles happen all the time, and most of them are other people.
It's a potent reminder, I think, that even after cosmic madness and theocracy and extremism have just ravaged a society, the foundation for recovery is always built on the smallest, most conscious act of individual honor. It's a choice you have to make moment to moment, even when you're battered and exhausted.
Indeed. It proves that the collapse of these great systems can only really be reversed by the integrity of the individuals within them. The question the narrative leaves you with is, how do we ensure we switch on that light before the next crazy season forces our hand?